Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing strong pressure from his American ally as well as the international community amid his decision to enter the biggest gamble of his career named Rafah. In an exclusive interview with CNN on May 8th, US President Joe Biden said that his administration would stop supplying weapons to Israel if the allied nation proceeds with a major attack on Rafah. The Israeli ambassador to the UN said yesterday that the US stopping weapon transfers could significantly diminish Israel's ability to achieve its military objectives. This is the first time President Biden has publicly declared this decision while he is under significant pressure domestically, even within his own Democratic Party. President Biden's policy towards Israel concerning the war in Gaza is a hot topic, especially as the presidential election approaches. On one hand, he issues an ultimatum about Rafah. On the other hand, he asserts that the US will not abandon Israel's security and will continue to provide defensive weapons to Israel, including the Iron Dome system. It should also be clarified that on May 8th, Biden emphasized that Israel has not yet crossed the red line of attacking densely populated areas in Rafah despite having caused tension in the border area with Egypt. Rafah, a southern city in Gaza, is currently a refuge for over 1 million civilians and refugees, half of whom are children. Mr. Hamish Young, UNICEF's coordinator in Gaza, emphasized yesterday that Rafah is hanging on the brink and those remaining in the city are living in extremely worrying conditions. President Biden acknowledged that US supplied bombs and ammunition have been used to kill civilians in the Gaza Strip, where Israel has been conducting a military campaign for the past 7 months in retaliation for a deadly attack by Hamas forces in southern Israel on October 7, 2023. According to Gaza health officials, the campaign has so far resulted in the deaths of nearly 35,000 Palestinians, mostly civilians. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warns that if Israel launches a ground assault on Rafah, it would be a strategic mistake, a political disaster, and a humanitarian nightmare. Over the past weeks, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has consistently stated that he will carry out a campaign in Rafah to completely destroy Hamas. According to the Financial Times, this decision marks one of the biggest gambles of Netanyahu's political career. Delaying the campaign to rescue hostages would please Hamas, but refusing a ceasefire agreement and deciding to launch a full-scale attack on Rafah could lead Israel to cross the US's red line and threaten the lives of hostages still being held. More than 100 hostages are currently in the hands of Hamas, which has been the most difficult issue for Mr. Netanyahu in recent months. Faced with this difficult choice, Mr. Netanyahu seems to be buying time. Airstrikes continue. The Rafah crossing with Egypt is controlled, and Israeli tanks have moved into eastern Rafah on May 8th to pressure Hamas. At the same time, a negotiation team went to Cairo, Egypt to discuss the possibility of reaching an agreement with Hamas on terms acceptable to Israel. Critics see this as a tactic for Mr. Netanyahu to appease the far-right members of the ruling coalition, while supporters say Mr. Netanyahu is calculating to negotiate favorably. He is stuck between dissenting groups within the cabinet, within Israeli public opinion, and between the fate of the hostages and the campaign objectives, as well as relations with the US, according to political strategist Nadav Straucheler, who has worked with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Observers believe that Hamas's sudden agreement to a ceasefire puts Mr. Netanyahu in an even more difficult position. Israel refuses on the grounds that some of the language is not correct as discussed. According to The Guardian, the future of Mr. Netanyahu's political career is somewhat in the hands of Israel's far-right ministers. He truly stands before a dilemma.